Okay, good morning. Ayin Beis, volume 2. We're on page 1154. Yeah. So we're at the end of the discourse 137, discourse 137. It's a Rosh Hashanah Maimer. So there's the end concluding with the answers to the questions asked at the beginning of the Maimer. So let me just sum up what we learned yesterday. He's explaining the Medrash Rabbah on the verse Ola Elokim B'Sruah, Havaya B'Kel Shefer. Or actually, no, on the Pasuk B'Chedesh Hashvi, I'm sorry. On the 7th month, first day of the month, so the Medrash Rabbah said, Ola Elokim B'Sruah, Havaya B'Kel Shefer, and basically all the steps of what Shefer accomplishes, that God moves God from the throne of din, of judgment, to the throne of compassion, from Malchus to Bina, from the Tzimtzum, concealment, to a form of the Bina, which is the Gvura El Yena, this power and the softening and sweetening of the Gvura. In turn, that draws down, then Mismale is filled with compassion, coming from the Gimel Rishenish of Kesach Chochma Bina all the way to Atik. And then he continues that it is Umarachim Aleihem. That's drawing back down the compassion from Bina into Malchus, sweetening the Gvura and the Din of the severities of Malchus, to the point of transforming judgment into compassion. So not just that you're reaching compassion, you also transform the kisei of Malchus, the throne of Malchus, which was initially judgment, into compassion. Okay. And when does this happen? In the 7th month. Why the 7th month? Because the 7th month refers to Bina, Shvi'ah. Bina is the 7th sphere from the bottom up, and which includes the Gimel Rishenis, Kodesh HaKadoshim, Shvi'ah, right? And that's why it says B'Chedesh HaShvi. Because through Bina, and then he started speaking about Halah. That in addition to the transmission of Bina downward, there's also the elevation. It's also through Bina. L'cha Hashem Hagdula. So everything gets elevated to Bina, and then from Bina gets drawn down. So Bina becomes the place, this 7th month becomes the place, the level 7, where there's the meeting between, like he says, Ischabros Halah V'Amshacha, the joining together of these two movements, working your way up and drawing it back down. And he gives the example, this is from the Maimer and Tiku, the second Tiku Bashefer in Likutei Torah, of the person standing on the mountain, on a hill, a mountain, and someone standing in a valley, and they meet halfway. Now, what is that in Aveda? So on page 1154, I'm continuing. The Aveda is that we who are in the valley, the neshama comes down in this dark world, where there's the Yerida Acher Yerida, a descent after a descent, a great descent into this world. So what is the Aveda, the Aliyah? When a person in this world leaves, Yitzias Adam, Ha'adam min ha'chumnius v'ha'tivya shalei, that we free ourselves, and we in a way exit from, and we leave behind the chumnius, the crassness and the nature of who we are. And how do you do that? It's through a morid de chushbana, through a contemplation. When you contemplate on the fact, mizbeinin, that the neshama came in its root from Atzilus, Tahirihi. And then it went, Barasi Yitzarta, it went down to Biyah. There in Atzilus, the soul sees the divine. And as he says, Dveikum Yichedes Be'erein Sof. It sees and is connected, attached, and united with godliness. and then it comes down into this world. A Yerida Gdela, and even more a Yerida into the body and the animal soul. So this does two things. One, it causes a sadness, Yismarmer benafshe, to the point that you cry with a very deep pain and deep sadness and bitterness of this great, this awesome, this powerful, very dramatic descent. And he says, this is Tkiya Shefer. Tkiya Shefer is that cry. The three sounds are three types of cries. The first Tkiya is the Tzaika Pshuta, just a long wail. The other two are like gasps and quick bursts of tears, Shvarim and Trua, which indicate that you're not at peace, you're restless, something's bothering you. Actually, he says the tkiya is a tzaika pshuta, it's a wail, a long wail, b'tshuka, gdela, lales, with a great yearning to elevate. So you have both the sadness of where you are and a great yearning to go back and reconnect to the tahirahi, the neshama as it's in Atzilus. That's what he says. So it sounds like that the tkiya, the first tkiya, the long wail, is more about the yearning, and the other two is more about the sadness. That's what it sounds like. It's not exactly explicit, but it sounds a bit like that. Okay. And this, in turn, this cry from the bottom, coming from the valley, remember the halah brings the hamshacha. And what's the hamshacha? The hamshacha is harachamim. So shefer is the avodah of Bina Lamata. Remember, we said the Shefer below evokes the Shefer above. So our Shefer is a cry from below, our effort, our halah, reaching to Bina, the Shefer Ilah, the higher level of Gvura, and that in turn transmits Rachamim. So all this is happening in Bina, both the halah and the Hamshach. Okay. And that's where we're up to. Now we're going to continue the last end of the Maimer. The last line was, like it's the line that begins that with those words on page 1154. Okay. Then he goes on. So we covered the Tkiya Rishena, the long wail, Tkiya, the Shvarim, the Trua, and now he says, V'zeu ha-Tkiya Ashniya. And this is now the second Tkiya. I assume he means the end, after you do Tkiya, Shvarim, Trua, Tkiya. So this seems to sound like it's the second Tkiya, the second long wail, which is the beginning, punctuates the middle ones. He says, Shezhu inyan adnei havaya b'shefer yitoka. Adnei havaya b'shefer yitoka. Adnai and havaya, with a shefer you sound. He says, b'pchinas hamshacha mo'mayla. This is a transmission from above. Okay, so it sounds like this. The first tkiya is from the bottom up. They call Tzaika Pshuta b'tshuka gdela lales, a great yearning to elevate. Then comes Shvarim and Trua, are two types of cries due to something not being you're not at peace. So there's a cry, but tenuas ktsaris, with tenuas ktsaris with shorter movements. That's all halah. The final tkiya, the tkiya shniya, is now the hamshachas harachamim. Adnai havaya
The
b'shefet.
Russian is Hashem Elokim, not Adnei Havai. I think the Russian Hashem Elokim b'Shefer Yiska.
So why does he say? Why does he write it this way? What's the lashon hapasuk?
That's in Tefillah in Hashem Elokim b'Shefer Yiska v'holach b'saris teimoin. Yom Kippur, you're saying it. Maybe even on Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, but he says Adnai Havaya. It says like in the other order. I'd have to look into this. I'm not sure. Well, the point is, once you invoke Havaya, you're invoking Rachamim. Because like we said, Ola Lakim B'Srua, Havaya B'Kel Shefer. Ola Lakim B'Srua, we said, was where the Eibishter goes up on Kisei Hadin, right? That's what the Medrash says. Yeah. And Hashem B'Kel Shefer is Rachamim. So clearly this pasuk, since it says Hashem in it, with the Hashem Elikim, right now it says Ad Navai B'Shefer Yitzka, sagst du Yitzka? Yitzka. Okay.
B'Shefer Yiska v'holach b'saris teimoin. Also gedenkt sich mir.
Okay, we have to look it up. Kapanim, he's calling this Hamshacham El Mailo. So essentially the four sounds, Tkiya, Shvarim, Trua. Tkiya, the first three is Halah, and the last Tkiya seems to be Hamshachah. That's what it looks like. Yeah. Okay, fine. So really this line belongs to the previous section. Now he's going to go back to B'Chedesh Hashvi Bina. Says like this. Umokim achibur. Remember, we're talking now two directions. What we do through Shefer and what it draws down. So initially the situation is like this. Bereshis bara Elokim, God created existence with Elokim, Din, Gvura, Tzimtzum, the Hey Gvuras of Zah, that diminished the light in Malchus, and Malchus conceals the light in the Yesh. So the Ayin is concealed in the Yesh. That's the initial creation. It's a state of concealment. What happens on Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah, the Eibishter sits the Kisei Din, which means he sits on the throne of judgment. One second, let me just this.
Okay.
On Kisei Din, which is Din, that this is Din. So now the world is being judged from Malchus. But then comes the shift. Here's now the Halah. Now come the Jews, the Jewish people, and they take their shofars, they take the shofar and they sound the shofar. And that is the Halah from the Avedis HaAdam. That is now not Gvuresecha Yidaberu, but now it's Lahidiyah Lebnei Adam Gvuresov. And now we are, through shofar, we are crying out, yearning to go up, sad over the Yerida. That cheshbon hanefesh, that soul searching, that effort evokes bina to shofar ilah, which is bina, causes the Eibishter to move from kisei hadin to kisei rachamim, from the throne of Malchus to the throne of bina. That's the aliyah. That in turn brings down the rachamim. Mismala rachamim all the way gimel rishenis, but then it brings down merachim aleihem. It brings the bina into Malchus, transforming the judgment into, sweetening it and transforming it into compassion. That's the Avodah. So you have Halah and Hamshachah. Where is all this happening? Where do they meet? They meet in Bina. Remember again, shofar below, it stimulates shofar above, which is Bina. Like he said from Zohar, the last page. So now he says the following. He says that these meet in Bina. Just 1 second. Okay, good. Shefer lo b'chinas bina v'yadanim shel b'chinas yeah. Good. So these two meet, the Halah and Hamshacha meet in Bina. That's what we're reading now. U'mokam achibur, the place they connect. Remember, the mountain and the valley, they meet halfway. So where's that happening? In Bina. Shesham magia Halah, that's where the Halah from below reaches. Umisham hu Hamshacha, and from there comes the Hamshacha, the transmission. Liyas hagili b'malchus, that the gili from Bina should come into Malchus, Kfeid Hadam Malchuse, and therefore the transformation, the sweetening of the Gvuras and the transformation into compassion.
In the Likutei Torah from the Alter
That's the
Rebbe, he's saying in the Likutei Torah, he said Shofar Stam, dass it carries the Rosh Hashanah, shenemar ve'adne havaya b'shofar yiska.
Like here.
Yeah, aber the pasuk is in Zechariah, Perek Tes, it said Vashem Elokim. Then the Alter Rebbe said the Yom Kippur, that is Meir Yovel Almo Decheru, then it is Galus from Shofar Gadol. Wo das is a andere, aber ve'adne havaya b'shofar yiska is a shofar from Rosh Hashanah. Aber pasuk it said Vashem Elokim.
So you fine. So we need to look into that. Fine. We already established that we need to look into it. But he does say Adnai Havaya, both in Likutei Torah, you're telling me now, and here. So here he's quoting from Likutei Torah. He clearly said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. We have to look into why he writes Adnai Havaya. It's probably discussed somewhere. Okay. So now we have the Gili and Malchus. So there we go. So Bina is the place where the meeting place takes place. V'zeu gam kemashe kosav be'echad lachedesh. Remember, it says b'chedesh hashvi be'echad lachedesh. His question was, why does it say b'chedesh hashvi? Okay, so we answered b'chedesh hashvi. Now he's explaining what's the next part of the pasuk. Be'echad, the first day of the month. So he says like this: the Isa b'medrash Rabbah, and it says in medrash Rabbah, medrash echad. What is echad? Ze Avram. The word echad, one. The unique one. It was Avram. That's Avram. Ukamashikosav echad hoya Avram. So echad lachedesh referring to Avram. Avram was echad. There was only one person like Avram. He was a unique one individual. So the level of echad goes in Avram. The Avram is sakin lukursaya. And below in the footnote, he fills in the word. Avram, remember before the Zohar talked about the tikkun of kursaya. Lisakna kursaya. The repair or the completion of the kisei, of the throne, of which throne? The Malchus. That is repaired and elevated or transformed through Bina. So it says in Zohar that this is done through Avram Avinu. Just 1 second, please.
He means Malchus, no? Isaki and
What's I'm saying? You have to do me a favor. Let me just say something. There are people in this. It's not just you and I learning together. Let me finish the whole thing, and then you can comment and ask questions because I just don't want to. People are listening here. I don't want them to confuse them. So it's not just if you and I were learning. I have no problems. If you don't mind, let me finish the piece, and then you can weigh in to add or anything you want to ask or comment on. Okay, is that fair? Just a second. Just trying to look at which Zohar he means. There were two Zayars he quoted. One was the Zayar about Shefer Law B'chinas Bina. It's probably that Zayar. Okay. Okay, so the Zayar there says that the Echad is Avram, who does, I'm sorry, not the Echad Avram. The Zayar says Avram is the one that repairs the Kisei, L'Kusaya, or Kameshikosa B'Zayar Sham. So here we go. He's going to explain now what this means. So now this is going to explain by Echad LaChedesh. So the Shefer Lamata, the Zayar says, awakens the Shefer Lamaylam Bina. That he clearly said. Through that come all the Hamshachas. Shefer Shalmat Me'er B'chinas Shefer Law. Okay. Bina. And that's the Tikkun Kursai. Okay, so here's what he says. The Hine Ad Avram, the Medrash says, Lo have a zikna. Till Avram, it says in Gemara, I think also in Medrash, there was no aging. There wasn't an aging process. People just died. The process of aging came by Avram. Avram Zokan Baba Yomim, it says. Avram Himshach B'chinas Zikna. What does that mean? Avram drew down Zikna. That is V'hu Inyan V'atik Yemin Yosef Al Kusaya. So it says in Daniel, the exact words is V'atik Yemin. Atik Yemin means the ancient days. But Atik Yemin, we also know, refers to Atik, like removed. So he says, Yosef al Kusaya. Basically, the exact expression is that the aged of days, the aged individual, sitting on a throne, and that's where it says, V'sadeshe ka'amar naka, the hair on his head is white like naka, like snow. And levushel, I'm sorry, like semer, like wool. Levushel ketlak chiver, or maybe the order is the other way. Levushel ketlak chiver. Yeah, his garments are like white, like snow, and the hair on his head is white, like semer, like wool. So this is referring to the level of atik yemin of keser, but it's also the word atik means old. So he's referring to that this level of zikna is amshacha from atik that comes through Avram. Avram brought down zikna because age is indicated by white hair. So the whiteness of atik was introduced by Avram Avinu. That level. Shalzen nemar nochen kisecha me'oz. Remember, we learned that before. That from the beginning, meaning from Oz is atik. Nochen kisecha, was established your throne. So you're talking about kisei invoking the level of atik. Because you remember we said the kisei of bina connects to the gimel rishenis all the way to atik. Of keser chachma bina and atik. So basically, okay. Hamshacha mebchinas atik, mebchinas malchus, va'idei hu tikkun hakisei. So the transmission from Atik into Malchus, because the Kisei is also referring to the Kisei of Malchus. We're drawing it all the way into Malchus, like we said, not just into Bina, into Malchus. And through this comes the Tikkun HaKisei. Tikkun means repair, but it also can mean beautification, sweetening, transformation of the Kisei Adin to Kisei Rachamim. That Rachamim goes from Bina, but originates all the way from Atik. That's what he said on the last page. It's Galus Atik Bebina, if you recall. So basically, So that's why it says be'echad lachedesh. In other words, so b'chedesh hashvi. When does all this happen? When does the halah and the hamshacha happen? B'chedesh hashvi in the level of bina, and bina leads us all the way to be'echad lachedesh, the level of Avram that reaches into Atik and draws down the rachamim into Malchus. The tikkun of the kursaya, of the kisei of the throne. Is it clear? Now I was going to say another thing about echad. Now, a lot of dense material here. Gam echad. Another hint in the word echad. We said be'echad lachedesh. First was Avram. Now he says that echad is begematria yud gimel. Is the numerical equivalent of number 13. What does 13 indicate? Ve'en yud gimel midas harachamim. The 13 attributes of what? Of rachamim, compassion. That's what we're looking to. Okay. So now, still one more word needs to be explained. The echad lachedesh. What is lachedesh referring to? So we did like this. The chedesh hashvi was bina. The echad is Avram, Atik, Rachamim, also Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim. Well, lachedesh, the last word, the echad lachedesh, that's referring to hu b'chinas malchus. Chedesh is referring, the moon is malchus. Hanikra chedesh. Malchus is called chedesh because that's where the Chiddush HaLevana is. That's the beginning of the month, lunar cycle. The moon refers to malchus, chedesh, the moon, the month. V'zeu be'echad hamshacha b'b'chinas malchus. So that's the meaning. Be'echad lachedesh, be'echad, the hamshacha of rachamim lachedesh, be'echad lachedesh, that yamamshach from echad, from the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, from Atik into lachedesh, into malchus. That's how he's teaching this. Be'echad lachedesh. So be'chedesh hashvi, the level of bina, which comes the law of hamshacha joined together, and what does it accomplish? The echad reaches into echad, Avram, Yud Gimel, lachedesh into malchus. Yeah, every word is here precise. V'zeu b'chedesh hashvi be'echad lachedesh, and this is the meaning. In the 7th month, in the first day, lachedesh to the month, meaning from Atik into Malchus, shefer, through the sounding of the shefer, Eimed, God rises from what? From the seat of judgment, v'yeshev al kisei rachamim, and he sits down into the throne of compassion. B'chinas kisei hakavod de bina, the honorary throne of bina, u'mismal aleim rachamim. And he's filled up with rachamim, not just the rachamim of bina, but he said the gimel rishenis. Now he says clearly yud gimel midas harachamim, because you could have rachamim and not yud gimel midas harachamim. Mismal aleim, he's now adding what he said to what he said earlier, that it's the gimel rishenis, Atik. That is the level of yud gimel midas harachamim, the 13 attributes echad. Umaracham aleim, and maracham aleim liyes hagili bebchinas malchus. That's the next addition. Not just that he fills with abundance all the 13 attributes, but now he's drawing it down. Merachem aleihem. Who's aleihem? He has compassion upon them. On whom? On Malchus. That there should be the Gili in Malchus. Shekise hadin yisapich lekise rachamim. That the throne of judgment should be transformed into the throne of compassion. Va'emasai. And when is this? He's giving now summing up the whole piece. B'chedesh hashvi, in the 7th month, shu mokem achibur be'emtza. That's the place where there's the connection in middle between halah and between hamshacha and Allah. They meet where in bina. V'zeu be'echad lachedesh, and this is also meaning be'echad lachedesh. Hamshacha be'malchus. Li is gili erein sov be'malchus shi gili hamalucha. By echad, the level of echad should radiate in malchus, in chedesh. It's a transmission in malchus that there should be the gili, not concealment, the revelation of the divine infinite light, Gili Hamalucha, in a revealed way, the empire, the kingship, the kingdom of God, the kingship of God should be revealed, not concealed. Like we learned earlier, Kved Hadar Malchuse. They deal with Bnei Adam, Gvuresov, Kved Hadar. That you see it in a revealed way, not as it was initially when it was concealed. Okay. That was a mouthful, and that is the conclusion of Maimon 137, where he brings this whole idea, Yesh and Ayin. The first, the Yesh is the Ayin is concealed from the Yesh, meaning the Ayin of Malchus or higher is concealed from the Yesh, and the goal is to reveal it in the Yesh, which is through Tkiya Shefer, where we transform it, which is, of course, consistent with the parentheses on page 1152, where he says that we daven, we bakosha v'yeda kol Paul ki ato fa'alta. Yeah. Okay. I am finished with the mime. Anybody want to ask anything or comment, please?
Yes, if you don't mind. In Zechariah, it is Adnei Avaya. Avaya is Benikud Elokim.
Okay, there you go. That's
okay.
it.
And the question is it possible to tie in the fact that it's Atik is Nimshach and Yud Gimel Midas are Nimshach? Is that the same thing?
Yud Gimel Midas Harachmim is usually the Hamshach of Atik, yes.
Okay. Havaya from it's okay.
Yeah. That's why he said, Echad, he said, Echad Hayavram, Hamshachim Ebchinas Atik, Nochen Kisecha Ma'oz. Said it clearly. He didn't say right here that Yud Gimel is Atik, but it's pretty clear that it is.
Okay, good. Thank you. Very good.
Also, he connected, remember, Mismale Rachmim, he said Bina encompasses Kesach Chochma Bina. And if you go back to the Mizmor Shir, Shomer Esem Shabbos, he clearly connects Shviyah of Bina to Atik. If you remember, he said Shviyah Alaihu. He said the Shviyah all the way to the highest levels, even the Aliyah of Atik. So there's no question that Bina connect. Remember, look on top of page 1153. What's the first words of the page? His Galus Atik hu bebina.
Yeah, that's right. Pinimis Bina, Pinimis Chacham, and Pinimis Bina. It's the his pashtus is Galus of Atik.
Well, he doesn't go into that distinction here. He just says his Galus Atik is in Bina. Bina is Kedesh Kedoshim, Kel Kol Gemel Shenis, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty clear. That's the level. Okay, good. So there we are. That's the Adnai Havaya. It's Kli and Ksiv. 1 second. That's Adnai Havaya. Now we resolved it. It's Kli and Ksiv. It's written Adnai Havaya, and you read it Havaya Lakim. Got it.
No, you read it Adnai Elokim.
Oh, Adnai. Oh, so Adnai is Havaya. Okay, got it. Oh, Adnai Elokim. That's how you read it?
Yes, that's how it is in Zechariah. I put it on the WhatsApp. I put it on the chat here, and that's how it is in the,
okay, got it. Thank you. Okay. Good. Okay. Excuse me?
Is Leo Stikun Kisei Shebevchinas Malchus Yeh Gilui Oil. So the Kosayo is the Malchus. Tikun Kisei Shebevchinas Malchus Yeh Gilui Oil.
He said that on page 1153 already, yeah. Yeah.
So what the Skona Kosayo, he came Mamshich from the Bina in Malchus. It should be the Kisei is going in Malchus.
That's what it says in Pshat. He said it says it beferish. What on page 1153 he first said it, and now he's repeating it. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Now we finished this mimer, page 1154. We can begin the next mimer, but I would suggest we go to Sadik Daled now, because this whole piece about Yesh and Ayin, which means the two different interpretations in Ayin, Sadik Daled goes over it. Most of it is not a lot of addition, but that's what I would do right now. Go to Sadik Daled with your permission. even though we can begin the next mimer, but it's going to go to the next subject. I'd rather do the Tzadik Dalet first and then we go there. Okay? So we have time. We'll do Tzadik Dalet right now. I'm moving now to Hamshach Tzadik Dalet. I have to get the sefer out of the bookshelf. Okay. So moving to Tzadik Dalet again, it's all on ayinbeis.com if you want to follow the actual text. Page 112. So I know we're moving here from one to the next, but that's what we should do. Okay. So if you look at top of page 112, which corresponds to Ayin Beis page 1151. If you remember, this whole piece, after explaining the three interpretations in the Ayin, that interface, the channel of divine energy, he went on to say, I'm sorry, the bottom of page 1150, I should say. Yeah. Just one second. Yeah. So on the top of page 112, which corresponds to the bottom of page 1150, so the Frierdiker Rebbe, whatever reason, did not begin a new chapter, which needs explanation how he divided the chapters here, because it seems like now starts a new subject matter within the Ayin, that the Ayin, Frierdiker, the Rebbe Rashab started a new paragraph at the bottom of page 1150 to explain, after explaining the three interpretations in Ayin, he now goes to explain what does Ayin mean? The difference between Das Elyon and Das Tachten. Does Ayin mean insignificance as it's seen from the perspective from above, Yesh Amiti and the Ayin? Or does Ayin mean from Das Tachten means something that is a different reality? And it's not a Dover who, as the Yesh Gashmi, the Yesh Nivra, I should say, is. And it's also Bilti Musug. It's not understandable. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, it would seem, I have to think into this, it would seem if you go back to page 111 that he should have, the beginning of chapter 24 should have been a continuation of the previous chapter, and the top of page 112 should have begun a new chapter. That would be much more consistent with the way it's in Ayin Beis. But the Frierdiker Rebbe doesn't do it that way. He talks about the Chetzenius Se'er and Pnimius Se'er, which is the third interpretation or of the two levels of Ayin. I don't know the third interpretation, but upon him, the outer dimension of light. And from that, he goes right into, on top of 112, he says, V'zehu, and this is where we're starting, line 2 on 112. V'zehu da ha'ayin, hine agam shenikr b'shem echad ayin. So after explaining, I think I understand why he did it this way. He's now saying, we just explained that the two levels of Ayin is the outer dimension of Eir and the inner dimension. Remember, like Etzem Eir is Pashtus Eir, inner and outer. And he explained that with the inner and outer containers. One is the function of the container, the Metzias, and one is the Muhus, which is its inner personality to receive the divine energy. So it's really two sides of one coin, of one Eir, Chetzenius and Primis. So now he continues, he says, V'zeu, da ayin, hine agam shenikr b'shem echad, ayin. So even though this level of ayin, with the ayin of the Yesh Amiti and the ayin of the Yesh Nivra, even though they're both called by the name ayin, one name, hine ein pirushe shava. Its meaning is not similar. Kamoishu lagabe mashpia, the way it is from the perspective of the transmitter, the mashpia, l'kameshahu l'gabe makabel. the way it's understood from the perspective of the recipient. So the same word ayin has different meanings. So this is exactly what we learned at the bottom of 1150. So don't be surprised, you're going to hear exactly what we learned. And most of it, again, is exact word for word from page 1150 through 1152 that we just finished. He does not have the whole piece about Shefer and Gvuras and Malchus. I should correct myself. He has a piece of it, but not most of what we learned at the end of the mimer, because this is a different mimer. Just for the record. Okay. So I'm going to read relatively quicker than usual, because a lot of this is just literally word for word from Ayin Beis. Everybody understands what I'm doing here? I just don't want to confuse anyone. It's like, think of this class as the second part. The first half, we finished the mimer, but now I'm going back to Tzadik Dal to continue this theme here. Okay. So here's what he says. The Yesh Amiti. So we've established two different meanings. And we already know what he's going to say because we learned it. So the Yesh Amiti huwa mashpia shemashpia hakel. The Yesh Amiti, the true and absolute reality existence is God. That's the mashpia. That's called the mashpia. They just call the dasa mashpia. The mashpia, rather, just the transmitter. Shemashpia hakel. He transmits everything. Everything comes from, who's the ultimate mashpia? The ultimate transmitter, the source of everything, is the Yesh Amiti, the true reality God, Atzmos. From you, everything. Hakel comes everything. Like it says elsewhere, this is actually an addition, this line, the Reb Friedrich Rebbe adds. Due to this, on this name, Nikra B'Shem Tchila. This is why the Eibishter is called Tchila, the beginning. Shu Tchila Sakel. He's the beginning of everything. But not beginning, as we'll learn in a moment, as a mocker. Because he doesn't have anything in common with the rest of existence. But he's the beginning, the source of it all, basically. Like the Rambam writes right in the beginning. All nimtzayim, everything that has everything in existence, all things that are existent, mishamayim v'oretz, from heaven and earth, umasha b'neim, and that which is in between them, heaven and earth, don't exist only due to the true existence, which is the source, Atzmos. So now that we've established that he's the mashpia, what is the perspective from Yesh Amiti on Ayin? What is the meaning of the word Ayin then? Meaning the light that comes from Atzmos, from the Yesh Amiti. Says v'zeu pirush Ayin legabe Yesh Amiti, pirushei Ayin mamish. And this is the meaning of Ayin in comparison. One second. And this is the meaning of the ayin in context of the Yesh Amiti. He says, Zel Pirush Ayin, so the Gabi Yesh Amiti Pirushe Ayin Mamish. Mamish Ayin, nothingness. Not relative, not because it's unknown, not because it's not of our substance, but Mamish Ayin, complete nothingness. She'enet tefes mokim klal. It doesn't have any value. Tefes mokim literally means it does not occupy space. But tefes mokim really doesn't occupy any value. It doesn't have any significance or value at all. Shegam etzem ha'er. Also the etzem ha'er, as we learned. Even also the core energy. Einei tefes mokim klal u'klal legabe atzmos. Does not carry any value. It's completely meaningless in comparison to Atzmos, from the perspective of Atzmos. Even the Eir Atzmi, being that it's Eir, and not Veloy Atzmi, not essence, it's not a core essence, it's not an essence, it's Eir, it's a reflection. Harihuraka ora levad. It's only a reflection. She'einu mahuz dover la'atzmei. That does not have any personality of all on its own. All it is a reflection of its source. Ve'ein tefes mokim klal. And does not carry any weight, does not carry any value. So again, you may recall, we just learned this a little while. We learned it maybe last week, 2 weeks ago. This is again language of Ayin Beis. Now he goes to the piece of Hagni Hashem Le'Shanisi. As I said, I'm not going to explain everything I explained in Ayin Beis. I'll only explain if the Friedrich Rebbe adds something. If you want an explanation, anything we learn here, I suggest go find page 1151 in previous recordings and go over that. So just because I want to move quicker, I don't want to just go over the whole thing, explain it all from scratch. It says like this. What?
I know you explained it, but how do you say it's Tahov Makom to the Eibishter when the Eibishter was concerned enough to create and make all these things? I don't know. I can't. I forgot what you said. Maybe you said it. I don't know.
The Eibishter could want to do anything. Just because he does something doesn't mean it has value. The word value is meaningless when you're dealing with atzmus. Value is only a word that can be used when you're talking about things that have been created. So you could say, I find a human being valuable to me. My job is important to me. My family is important to me. Because we have needs. We're dependent. That word value, the actual thing, money is valuable. When you're dealing with atzmus, a reality that is completely self-contained, that has no need for anything. Atzmus. The word need doesn't even exist. It's not definable. You can't define it by anything. You can't define it by calling it creator. You can't define it by calling it not creator. So a reality of that nature is not another reality. It's completely different. Built to Mitzias Nimtza. It's the only thing we can say, it doesn't exist like our existence in any way. So therefore, whatever he does is because he wants to do it. Even the word want is not the right word. He doesn't. That's what he wants. So just because he does it doesn't mean it has value to him. It has value for his purpose, yes. But to him, as the Mitzias of Atzmus, so the simple example would be sunlight compared to the sun. It doesn't have any impact on the sun, doesn't have any connection to the sun. The sun was created to give sun. The difference is that the sun is an existing entity, a created entity. That's why it's not a perfect comparison. But there's a certain state of complete self-containment that anything that comes from it doesn't have any value, doesn't have anything in common with it. So we could say, what then is Oir? Oir is a creation of God where he wanted to reflect some of himself into an independent existence called the universe. He wanted desires a dira b'tachten. Why? There's no why. There's no fulfillment. There's no need. Nothing. You're not going to be able to answer why because there is no why there. In our situation, a human being has needs because we're defined creatures and we're not complete without certain things. So you have to understand, think about Atzmus, and you realize that there is no existence in reality that has anything that needs to be. Nothing has to be. Everything is willed.
In other words, it's not saying he has the tough spot.
No, it's still not Teifus Mokum. No, it's not Teifus Mokum even after it exists. Because just because he wanted something doesn't make it have value to him. The word value is not a word you could apply to God.
And
you can only apply it to us.
I think it means more that it doesn't apply to him, but I guess it's hard to say. But how you just explained it very well, that it has no application. It has no application. You can't say it has tough and smug, but you can't. It doesn't have. You can't say anything.
By the way, he didn't say it doesn't exist. He didn't say it doesn't exist. He said it doesn't have value. He didn't say it doesn't exist. The word value means it has nothing in common with Atzmus. So basically, essentially, Atzmus wants something to reflect himself. but it doesn't have anything in common with Atzmus that you can say, this has value, less value, more value. Like those Atzmi have more value in the eyes of Atzmus than a little insect on earth?
Gotcha. Yeah, we can't. So it's really, I should think of it like we can't say that he has toughest machal. We can't say we can't even say it doesn't have toughest, but we just can't even use the phrase with it. I mean, it's hard to explain, but I think I got it.
Look, examples used in Chassidus is when, let's say, you say when there's a big Chacham Gadol, they're so big that the others in his presence don't have any, what's the word? They don't have any status. Status is a good word. There's no status. They have no status. When we're sitting right now and there's an ant crawling on the floor, it's not teifus smoking by you. It completely has no relevance. So there's a certain what's called really ein areich. That's really the key word. That Atzmus always remains ein areich. Even when he does something, remember we said he's not nitvis by it. He's not defined by it. We are defined by our needs. Atzmus is not defined by oir. That he wants it, yes, it has a purpose, correct. So all you can say is that Atzmus chose for oir to have its purpose and function because it's necessary to be able to create creation. But actually you could say that oir is almost an emtsoi. It's a means to an end. It's a means to dir b'tachtein, because you don't say Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu lahavis memene oir, that God desired to give off light. What would be the purpose? We don't know. It said Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu liyislei Baruch dir b'tachteinim. He wants a home at Tachteinim. In order for there to be Tachteinim, you need to have Tzimtzum and a Ur. So the whole idea of revelation and concealment are all part of the Nesava. And Nesava as well does not define as a need. It defines it as a desire. Okay. I mentioned, for example, when you say the infinite set of numbers compared to the finite set of numbers. So infinite is an equalizer. 1 and a trillion are equal in the eyes of infinity. But they're all numbers. Even the infinite set of numbers values the idea of numbers. So what's lacking in the finite is what they don't have. They're not infinite. But you can't say that infinity looks at finite as if it's non-existent. But if you asked a reality that doesn't even value numbers, there's no numbers altogether. For it, not only what you're lacking is missing, but even what you are has no value. That would be an example of an ein areich. So infinite numbers can say finite is lacking something. But you can't say that what it has no value. It's a set of numbers. It's finite numbers. From a point of view that's beyond numbers altogether, you don't even say, even what you have, even infinite has no value. Why should it have value? Numbers don't mean anything to me. And that could only be said by a Metzias that is Metzias built to Metzias Nimtza, Metzias Matzmuse, Mechuyev HaMetzias. An absolute reality is the only one that's the source of it all that can have that element. Okay. Well, it's already 10:30, so let me just see. It's not a muhuz that has any personality of its own. Okay, we'll stop here because then I was going to go to Loisha Nisi, again, which we discussed at length. This is not such easy stuff. Your questions are a good question. The question you asked is a good question. I tried to discuss it when we learned it in Ayin Beis, but you need to go over it again and again to understand that, you see, the key thing is to remember that Atzmus is so different. We are so different from Atzmus. There's nothing in common you can connect except that God wants us. That's the only thing you can say. He desired that we should exist. So he essentially imposed upon himself, if you wish, a connection. But even that connection does not define him. And everything that we talk about connecting to God is not about Atzmus, it's about Ur. And in some way, because Ur is bittul, it leads us to Atzmus, which we talked about as well. So let's stop here. At this class, you can really divide into two. The piece that we finished, the Maimer on page 1154. And now we went back to page 112. And we're just reviewing. We're going to go from 112, just to give you the lay of the land. From 112, we're going to go from 112 to where? Yeah, to 114. Not so bad. To the top of 114. Then we're going to go back to the new Maimer in Ayin Beis. Yeah. So we don't have, it's basically 2 pages we're going to review here. So let us stop here now.